This is the Shark Slider Nano from iFootage. Hey, if you don't know me, my name's Jake and I create content here to help solo creators on the go. People like me who are on the go creating small commercial projects or stuff here on YouTube. So I test and review equipment here in Alaska, and I do tips and tutorials on how to use that equipment so that you can tell better stories and make smart decisions when you go to buy a new piece of gear. Today we're talking about the Shark Slider Nano from iFootage, but first, disclaimer. iFootage sent this slider to me to review, but they don't get any input on this video, they're not paying for this video, and they don't get to preview it before the video goes out. So these opinions are my own, but I do appreciate them sending me this slider to test and review here in Alaska. When I first got into filmmaking, I used to think of sliders as something that you primarily use to create motion time lapses with, and they do a great job at that. This was shot using the iFootage Nano and it looks great because it adds a subtle motion to the time lapse. Probably the second thing that a lot of people think of for sliders is using them for product videography, and they do work really well at that because you can get these incredibly smooth shots of products. They add a whole new dimension of what you can do with product B-roll especially, but sliders can be so much more than that when it comes to storytelling, because you can use the slider to add subtle motion and subtle movement to what would ordinarily be a static locked off shot. And you can use that to your advantage by revealing more information as we go. So here we start out slightly behind the ice and then move to reveal where our subject is walking into, and you see the glacier in the background. And there is something to a slider shot in a scene that would normally be static where there's just a subtle amount of motion. It makes it feel so much better and so much more interesting to watch something when there's just a slight amount of movement in it. And if you're like me and you do most of the stuff, most of your work by yourself, it's really nice to have something that basically acts like a second cameraman that you can program in motion, program in movement to add a lot of dimension to your storytelling, where you don't have to worry about the camera motion, the camera movement, but you can just concentrate on filming your subject. Or if it's yourself or stuff like on YouTube, then you can get this great motion like somebody else was filming you, but nobody else was filming you. We've covered a few reasons why you might want to add a slider to your kit. They're really powerful storytelling tools when used correctly, but this specific slider really got me excited because it's small, it's compact, it's portable, it fits easily in my camera backpack. And because it's not just a slider that moves back and forth, it also has a pan motor built into it. So that means you can get really great, really smooth controlled parallax shots. There are a few things that really have stood out to me about this specific slider and how easy it is to use, how much time iFootage has put into not only the user interface on the little touchscreen here, but just how simple and how fast, how easy this thing is to set up and to use in any sort of environment. And believe me, I have tested this in all kinds of different environments. And this is a dual action slider, which means you can get up to 200 millimeters of travel when it's sitting on a desktop, or when you put it on a tripod, you get double that, 400 millimeters of range, which gives you a lot of ability to get a lot of motion in your what would normally be pretty static shots. You can power it via USB-C from a wall power or a USB-C power pack just like this using a USB-C cable, or you can use NPF style batteries. But if you plug it in via USB-C, it will also recharge the NPF power pack while the slider is in motion. One of the things I most appreciate about this is that you can use these touchscreen to basically program and set up everything on the slider, which I love, because if I don't have my phone out, or my phone is dead because it's too cold, or it's just cold period, this works great. And incidentally, it works really well with gloves on in the cold, which is more than I can say for other touchscreens I've used. So iFootage has done a great job with the implementation of this touchscreen. But you can also use the app, which is really fantastic when you're when you want to use and get more control using your phone. You push start the app, sit there. This is where it will check for firmware, new firmware, if you leave it on here for a minute or two. See, it has a new firmware update. But we're going to skip that for now. Go in here. It's running, obviously. So it goes straight into the running mode here. And then you can control basically everything from the app, just like you did. You can move the slider left, right. You can change the pans, all of that. And the best thing that I like about it is the time-lapse mode. You can go into time-lapse mode. You can set your A and B points just like you did using the app or using the slider. And then you can set your interval, how often you want the exposure to be, how long you want the buffer to be between the shots. And then you can set your output time, which basically says you want a 20-second time-lapse at those exposures. And you want the ending time-lapse to be at 30 frames a second or 24 frames a second, whatever you might be shooting for. And then you can also set a delay for when you want the time-lapse to start, which is fantastic if you're shooting at night and you want to get out of the way with your flashlights so you don't throw off the exposure. And then the slider does all the calculations for the rest. You set your camera on here, you plug in the appropriate cable, and put your camera in photo mode, and the slider takes care of all of the rest of it. Now, to show you how easy this is to set up and use, I'm just going to do it live on camera. Plug a power source in, push and hold the power button until the screen turns on, and then you let it go through its boot up sequence. One thing that when iFootage very first released this, their initial firmware, it had to go through a complete calibration setup, but now they've shortened and abbreviated that to be a much quicker startup time and a much shorter calibration system. So just like that, we're ready to go. Now I'm going to use my phone because my camera is filming me right now. And my favorite way to use this, and the way I use it the most of the time, is push both buttons at the same time, and that puts it into this mode where you can basically set it, hit whatever point you want that to be, do your second B point, make that a B point, hit confirm, push standby. And now I'm going to change the time because I don't want it to take that long. So I'm going to put it to 10 seconds. And I want it to loop back and forth. So I'll hit the loop button. You can also switch the A and B points and then hit record, hit start. And the slider starts going through exactly the motion, both with the pan motor and the slide back and forth to whatever you set that will be. And then since I've hit loop, this will essentially repeat until the battery dies, which is going to be hours. But it gives you really nice, really smooth motion. And then we need to talk about durability, because that's always a major concern for me going out and shooting in the environments I shoot in. And I've taken this out at around 0 degrees Fahrenheit with the wind chill of probably -10, which puts that at -17 Celsius, maybe with the wind chill -25 Celsius, which is extremely cold. And this has performed great all the way through that, even in those freezing cold temperatures. Wear gloves because the aluminum does get quite cold to touch. I've also taken it out in snow, in high winds, and it's handled the winds really well without issue, and it still gives you really smooth, really usable footage. Now, when it comes to usability in situations like this, when it's sitting on a desktop, iFootage says it can handle 3.5 kg, which is about 7.7 pounds. When it's sitting on a tripod, it's limited to about 2.5 kg or 5.5 pounds. And when you use it vertically, which you can, it's limited to 2 kg, which is 4.5 pounds. Your specific setup might give you different results depending on how you use it. But for me, using this with the Sony mirrorless camera and the Tamron 70 to 180 actually produced pretty good results. Now, when I got out all the way to 180, that's what it started to struggle, but I had no issues using it even at 85 millimeters like you see here. Something I appreciate about this slider is how quiet it is. Basically, iFootage says 38 dB, which is pretty much around the noise floor of most rooms that you would be working in. But this thing is extremely quiet. If you can hear it here, you can't really. It's quieter than my computer fans. Not only does this add a lot of versatility and a lot of options when it comes to how you want to tell your story by choosing how you reveal information to your audience or keeping them engaged by just having subtle motion throughout a shot that would normally be static, but it also works really well for interviews. So one of the ways I like to set up for interviews is have two cameras, an A camera and a B camera. The A camera is looking at my subject and filming somewhat of a wide shot, whereas the B camera is a much tighter shot and over to the side a little bit, and using this on the B camera to add a subtle motion and some parallax to that B camera makes it so much easier to edit interviews, as you can see here on an interview that I recently was featured in. Welcome back. Today we're sitting down with an up-and-coming YouTube creator, Jake Sloan. It's good to have you here. Thanks for having me. So can you tell me why you wanted to start YouTube? What got you going down this path of creating a YouTube channel? You know, I think most people start YouTube because they want to get famous or they want to make a lot of money really easily. But I originally started YouTube to really create and post videos about me and my family, my kids and I doing stuff outdoors, and it just sort of snowballed from there into what I'm doing today. Interesting. So is it, I mean, let's be honest, is it as easy as everybody thinks it is, as it looks at least when you watch your videos? It is not as easy as people think it is. It's hours and hours of editing, it's tons of extra work, and especially what I'm doing now where I'm going these places that I'm going, I will travel for hundreds of miles sometimes in a single day between driving and hiking to get to some of these locations that I'm in. And then sometimes I have to do it all again because something didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's much more work than people think. There's been some controversy surrounding you in the last year, 18 months or so, and I'd like to dive into that. So what can you tell me about some of the controversy that's been brought up about you and your channel? Oh, the controversy. It really all started with a couple of comments that people left on my videos about me doing everything in front of green screens. And it just snowballed from there, and it kind of blew out of proportion to where a lot of people think I do this stuff in front of a green screen. So why not just be honest? Excuse me? What is this? Some sort of gotcha journalism? I'm giving you the opportunity to set the record straight here today, to come clean. Do you use a green screen? I do not use a green screen. Everything I do is real. It's on location, it's live, it's in the moment. So you're telling me all of it is real? All those places you've gone, glaciers, ice caves, mountains, mountain lakes, all these places across frozen lakes and wilderness areas, they're all real? Yeah, all of it is real. I really do these things. I really go to these places. It's something I love doing. I really enjoy going to these places, and I enjoy the process of creating and exploring. Jake Sloan, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for being here, and thanks for setting the record straight today. My pleasure. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Controversy aside, iFootage has put together a tremendously powerful, small package, portable slider that works really well in a lot of different conditions, and in my experience, so far, has been very durable considering the amount of stuff that I've put this thing through. You can order this in two different flavors. One is the standard bundle, which is the slider, a USB-C type cable, and a smartphone mount, which is for a limited time, I think, but it's a really well-designed smartphone mount. Or if you decide to get the bundle, which I would recommend because you get a lot of extras, including this really nice carrying case, all of the cables that will go with the compatible cameras to be able to control the slider time-lapse functions, the NPF 750 battery, which gives you about 4 hours of runtime, and the smartphone mount. There will be a link in the description that will take you to iFootage's site or B&H Photo, somewhere where you can pre-order this. It'll be an affiliate link for some of those. I want to thank iFootage for their patience. They sent this to me a while ago, and basically we had a long stretch of bad weather that I had to fight through to be able to go out and actually test and use this out in location. But it has handled everything that I took it through like a champ and just incredibly well, which is really impressive considering some of the conditions that I was working in. If you want to know what other gear I think is really essential for solo creators, then click or tap right there. I put it together a small playlist. I'll see you in one of those videos. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream on Wednesday nights from 4 p.m. Alaska time or 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you again soon in the next video. Cheers.